What would you do if you came home one evening and found 50 strangers in your yard, drinking your beer, trampling your lawn, and treating your home like a public park, all without your permission? That's exactly what happened to me. I pulled into my driveway expecting a quiet night, maybe a beer and some leftover pizza, but instead, I was hit with the thick, smoky scent of grilled meat. At first, I thought it was coming from a neighbor's house, but as I turned the corner, my stomach twisted into a knot. The smell was coming from my own front yard. I slammed my car door shut and just stood there, staring. My lawn, my neatly trimmed, private, definitely not public lawn, had been hijacked. Tables and chairs were scattered across the grass, a massive grill was spewing smoke near my porch, and at least 50 people were drinking, laughing, and stuffing their faces with burgers. My patio furniture, which I had just cleaned last weekend, was occupied by old men arguing over golf scores. Then my eyes drifted further back. A bouncy house. In my backyard. My heart rate spiked as I stepped forward, trying to process the sheer absurdity of what I was seeing. Kids were shrieking, cannonballing into my pool. Strangers were wandering in and out of my open garage. One guy, who I had never seen in my life, was pouring himself a drink from my liquor shelf like he had just stumbled into an open bar. I was frozen, caught between rage and sheer disbelief. That's when I spotted her. Karen. The self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, standing by the grill with a plastic cup in one hand and an air of smug self-importance so strong it practically radiated off her. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, like I was an old friend instead of the actual homeowner whose property she had commandeered. "Oh, Ethan, you're home early," she called out, smiling as if I had just crashed her party. "Isn't this wonderful?" I blinked. My brain short-circuited. "I'm sorry, what?" I took a slow, measured breath, trying to process the sheer insanity of what I was seeing. My property had been turned into a full-blown festival, and Karen was acting like I should be grateful for the privilege. My jaw tightened as I took another step forward. "Karen," I said, my voice unnervingly calm, "what the hell is going on here?" She sighed, like a mother indulging an impatient child. "Ethan, this is the annual HOA charity barbecue. I sent emails. There were flyers. It's for a great cause, the Neighborhood Park Fund." She took a sip from her cup and smiled like that explained everything. I let out a sharp laugh, disbelief mixing with growing anger. "Karen, I'm not in the HOA. You never asked me. You never even told me." "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said with a wave of her hand. "It's just one evening. Besides, your yard was just sitting here, unused. It would have been selfish not to use it for something the whole community could enjoy." Selfish. She actually called me selfish. I glanced around, my pulse spiking. My neatly arranged flower beds. Crushed under the weight of a buffet table. My lawn ornaments. Moved to make space for coolers of beer. My privacy. Completely obliterated. Then I heard the splash. A big one. Followed by laughter. I turned sharply, dread pooling in my gut. A group of kids had just cannonballed into my pool. One of them, who I didn't recognize, because of course, I didn't, was holding something in his hands. A familiar shape, a blinking light. My stomach dropped. My Bluetooth speaker. Before I could even react, the kid fumbled, and the speaker hit the water with a splash. Silence. My eye twitched. The laughter resumed. I turned back to Karen, but she was already waving dismissively. "Oh, relax, Ethan. The kids needed a place to play, and your pool was just right there. What's the harm?" "What's the harm?" The harm was that my house, my yard, my belongings, my sanity, were all being treated like a free-for-all. I clenched my fists. "Karen," I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the noise, "get everyone out. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Karen's smile faltered. Ethan, don't be so grumpy. This is a community event. I am not in your hoa. My voice cut through the air like a whip. And you are all trespassing. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some people grabbed their plates and quietly shuffled away, suddenly remembering urgent plans elsewhere. But Karen? She folded her arms and doubled down. Ethan, you're being ridiculous. It's for charity. You wouldn't seriously shut down a good cause over something so petty. I let out a sharp laugh. Petty? Petty is breaking into someone's home and pretending it's yours. I gestured wildly at the chaos. People are in my pool. Drinking my alcohol. Using my furniture. Karen rolled her eyes, still unfazed. Oh, Ethan, it's not like. That's when I heard a nervous voice behind me. I think we should go. I turned to see one of my neighbors shifting awkwardly. He looked uncomfortable, guilty, even. Karen narrowed her eyes. Oh, don't be silly, Daniel. We already collected the money. My head snapped toward her. Collected money? A new wave of cold fury washed over me. A different neighbor, an older woman clutching a half-eaten burger, looked between Karen and me before hesitantly speaking up. Yeah. Karen said the house was, donated for the event. She, charged an entry fee. The air went still. Karen charged people to enter my house. She turned my home into a paid event venue. My vision went red. You what? Karen laughed, like this was some quirky misunderstanding. Oh, come on, Ethan, don't make a big deal out of this. It's just a small donation. And people were happy to contribute. Everyone wins. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the camera app, yeah. Then I assume you won't mind when I send you the bill. Karen blinked. Excuse me. I started snapping photos. The crowd. The tables. The grill. The beer coolers. She took a step forward, her expression darkening. Ethan, what are you doing? I didn't even look up. Documenting. Snap. For the invoice. Snap. Karen's smile vanished. That's ridiculous. I met her gaze, my lips curling into a slow, dangerous smirk. No, Karen. What's ridiculous is thinking you could steal my property and get away with it. I raised my phone toward the soaked kids climbing out of my pool. Snap. She paled. I put my phone away and crossed my arms. Since you decided to host an event on my property, let's talk rental fees. Let's say, 10 grand. Sounds fair. Someone actually choked on their burger. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's jaw fell open. That's absurd. I scoffed. So is throwing a party in someone's house without permission. But here we are. More people started packing up in a hurry. Karen seethed, her fingers curling into fists. You can't just. I raised a brow. Sue me. For the first time that night, Karen didn't have a comeback. I watched with satisfaction as people scrambled to load up their cars, suddenly eager to escape. The bouncy house deflated like a dying balloon. The grill was shut off. The music cut out. Within minutes, the entire event was in frantic retreat. Except for Karen. She stood rooted to the spot, boiling with rage. You're making a mistake, Ethan. I exhaled, slipping my phone into my pocket. No, Karen. You did. And with that, I walked into my house, locked the door, and started drafting the most satisfying rental invoice I had ever written in my life. The morning after the invasion, I stepped outside to assess the damage. It was worse than I thought. My once neatly trimmed lawn looked like a herd of elephants had danced across it, patches of grass torn up, deep footprints embedded in the dirt. Plastic cups and napkins littered the yard like a crime scene. Greasy grill stains smeared my driveway. My flower bed flattened beneath what had clearly been a buffet table. The pool water was murky, floating with debris, chips, soaked paper towels, and a pair of mismatched flip-flops bobbing pathetically at the edge. I closed my eyes, inhaling slowly. I was beyond livid. Pulling out my phone, I started documenting everything. Every crushed plant. Every beer can, one of which was actually in my mailbox. Every single sign of destruction. This wasn't an inconvenience. This was a full-blown invasion. And I wasn't about to let Karen gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. As I sifted through the aftermath, my stomach clenched at a new realization. Some of my belongings were missing. My Bluetooth speaker was dead at the bottom of the pool, but that wasn't the worst of it. My expensive crystal whiskey glasses were gone. The bottle of 30-year-old scotch that had been in my garage. Emptied. And the worst offense, my father's old watch, a sentimental heirloom that had been in a case in the garage, was missing. That was the last straw. I stormed back inside and opened my laptop. If Karen had just apologized and offered to pay for the damages, maybe I would have let it slide. But she hadn't. She laughed in my face. Acted like I was the unreasonable one. So, I got professional. A quick online search confirmed what I already suspected: unauthorized use of private property could legally be considered a rental. I dug deeper. Trespassing? Check. Property damage? Check. Theft? Definitely check. To get a better idea of the total damages, I called a local contractor. Sent him photos. Got a quick online estimate. Just to repair my lawn alone would cost me over $3,000. And that didn't include the pool cleaning, the stolen alcohol, the missing watch, or the dent someone had left in my mailbox. By the time I was done adding everything up, I smirked at the final total. $10,000. If Karen wanted to act like my house was a community center, she was about to pay rent like one. I printed the invoice, folded it neatly, and marched straight toward her house. Walking up her driveway felt satisfying. Karen's house was as obnoxious as her personality: a manicured lawn, a massive, live, laugh, love sign by the door, and a wreath that had no business being up in March. I knocked. A few seconds later, Karen opened the door, still in a fluffy pink bathrobe, holding a steaming mug of coffee. She blinked in surprise when she saw me. "Oh, Ethan," she said, her voice almost pleasant. "Is this about yesterday? I was actually going to come talk to you." I handed her the invoice. No words. Just extended it. She took it, glanced down, and then her face twisted in sheer disbelief. Her lips moved silently as she read, eyes widening with each line. And then she gasped. $10,000. Are you insane? I crossed my arms. It's called fair compensation. Karen let out a short, forced laugh, but there was panic behind it. Ethan, come on. It was a charity event. You can't seriously expect me to pay you 10 grand just because a few people used your yard. I kept my voice calm. I absolutely can. And if you refuse, I'll be filing a small claims lawsuit for trespassing, property damage, and theft. Her face twitched. Court. You're really going to sue me over a barbecue? No, Karen. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. I'm going to sue you for breaking into my yard, stealing my things, trashing my property, and acting like you did nothing wrong. And if a kid had drowned in my pool? If someone had gotten hurt? You wouldn't just be looking at an invoice, you'd be looking at a lawsuit that could ruin your life. She swallowed. This is ridiculous. You're being petty. I laughed, shaking my head. No, Karen. You were being entitled. Now, you're just dealing with the consequences. She folded her arms, glowering. I don't have 10 grand, Ethan. Not my problem. Her nostrils flared. I'll talk to the HOA, maybe we can figure something out. I scoffed. Oh, I already know they're not going to cover it. Because I'm not in the HOA. This isn't their problem. It's yours. For a moment, she looked like she might actually apologize. But, of course, that would require self-awareness. Instead, she shoved the invoice back at me. I'm not paying this. I smiled. Then I'll see you in court. I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving Karen standing in the doorway, her coffee forgotten, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. It was a beautiful sight. But Karen wasn't done yet. She had one more dirty trick up her sleeve. And the next day, when I checked my mail, I found a letter from the HOA. I ripped it open, skimmed the contents, and then laughed. Karen had filed a complaint against me. The HOA was trying to fine me $1,500 for violations, for the mess she left behind. I exhaled, shaking my head. Oh, Karen. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. I stared at the HOA fine notice in my hands, my grip tightening with every passing second. $1,500. For failure to maintain lawn standards, improper disposal of waste, and violations of community aesthetics. Every single issue caused by Karen's unauthorized circus. I let out a sharp laugh. Unbelievable. She had trespassed onto my property, thrown a party without permission, left my yard in ruins, and now she had the audacity to try and fine me for it. Oh, she was going to regret this. I pulled out my phone, snapped a picture of the letter, and immediately emailed the HOA board. Short, direct, deadly. Hello HOA board, I recently received a fine regarding damages to my property. However, as you are all likely aware, I am not a member of the HOA, and these damages were caused by an unauthorized event hosted by Karen on my land. I have filed a claim against her for trespassing, property damage, and theft. If this fine is not rescinded immediately, I will be adding wrongful fees and harassment to my legal complaint. Kindly confirm receipt. Regards, Ethan. I barely had time to close my laptop before my phone rang. The number wasn't saved, but I knew exactly who it was. I picked up. Karen. You went to the HOA? She shrieked. No, Karen, I said, my voice mockingly patient. You went to the HOA. You filed a complaint against me, and now you're upset that I'm clearing up your mess. A long silence. Then, in a desperate tone, Ethan, listen, I was just trying to make a point. This is getting out of control. No, Karen, I said smoothly, settling onto my couch. It's finally getting under control. And speaking of, I just sent my lawyer the final details for my small claims case. You can't be serious. Oh, I am. Court date set. Another silence, this time shaky. And then, in a last-ditch effort, Karen scoffed, you think the HOA will back you? They're my people. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Karen, I said, smiling, you should check your email. A beat of silence. Then, the frantic clicking of a keyboard. I heard her sharp intake of breath. The HOA had completely disowned her. And then came the final blow. A neighbor leaked a video from the event. In the background, clear as day, Karen's voice rang out. Oh, don't worry about Ethan. He's at work. He'll never know. It spread like wildfire. The HOA board, furious at being dragged into legal trouble, held an emergency meeting. They were done protecting her. The fines? Rescinded. The blame? Pinned entirely on her. By the time I walked into the courthouse a week later, Karen looked like a shell of her former self. The smug arrogance was gone, replaced with dark circles under her eyes and a barely contained scowl. She barely said a word as the judge reviewed my evidence. Photos, estimates, property laws, the damning video. It wasn't even a contest. The ruling came down. Karen had 30 days to pay the full $10,000. And if she didn't? Wage garnishment. Liens. She turned to me, her voice low and venomous. You ruined my life. I smirked. No, Karen. You did. 2 days later, Karen put her house on the market. At first, I thought she'd try to fight her way back, spin some sob story about how she was the real victim. But no, she was too humiliated. Turns out, the HOA had one final betrayal left for her. They voted her out. At the next meeting, an older board member, Barbara, one of her longtime critics, stood up and said, I move to remove Karen as HOA president, effective immediately. Greg, one of the newer board members, nodded. Seconded. Karen's eyes widened. You can't be serious. Oh, we are, Barbara said. Because guess what, Karen? You didn't just trespass on Ethan's property. You scammed the HOA. The final vote? Unanimous. Karen, the once untouchable ruler of the HOA, was kicked out of her own kingdom. She stormed out of the meeting in a rage, but it didn't matter. She was done. And just when I thought it couldn't get better, it did. A headline popped up in the community paper. HOA president sued for trespassing, charity barbecue gone wrong. Karen's name wasn't in the article. But everyone knew. She lasted another 2 weeks before selling her house. Desperate to get out. She left without a word, without a fight. And just like that, Karen was gone. 4-0. The silence after Karen's departure was almost too good to be true. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt lighter. No passive-aggressive emails. No ridiculous fines. No Karen. Just peace. And I planned to celebrate that peace the best way I knew how. A week after she left, I threw a party. A real one, on my own property, with actual invitations, unlike Karen's unauthorized disaster. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The same neighbors who had rolled their eyes at the HOA's nonsense for years showed up in full force. Cold beers, grilled steaks, music that didn't get shut down by a noise complaint, it was perfect. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I noticed a familiar face, Barbara, the former HOA board member who had led the charge against Karen. She raised her drink toward me with a smirk. So, Ethan, she said, ever thought about running for HOA president? I nearly choked on my beer. Oh God, no. I'd rather set my house on fire. She laughed, shaking her head. Smart man. The party stretched late into the night, and as I leaned back in my chair, watching people actually enjoy themselves without the looming threat of HOA drama, I realized something. For the first time since moving in, I felt at home. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on the door. For a split second, I thought maybe, just maybe, Karen had come back for one last desperate attempt at revenge. But when I opened the door, it was a courier holding a thick envelope. I ripped it open and let out a slow whistle. It was Karen's official resignation letter, from the HOA entirely. I guess being publicly humiliated, sued, and ostracized by the very people she once ruled over had finally broken her. She had lost her power, her home, and her reputation. And now, she was making sure she could never come back. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. A few months later, a new couple moved into Karen's old house. They looked normal, cheerful, even. The wife waved as she got out of the car. "Hey. We're your new neighbors. Anything we should know?" I thought about it for a moment. Then I smirked. "Just don't throw a barbecue on my lawn, and we'll get along great." She laughed, clearly thinking I was joking. I didn't correct her. Some things were better left in the past. So, what do you think? Did Karen get what she deserved, or did she get off too easy? Have you ever dealt with a Karen or a nightmare HOA? Share your stories below, let's see who had it worse.